Hey everybody, it's Scott here at Extreme Performance Training Systems in Atlanta, Georgia. In this video I want to talk about how we utilize club swinging with our combative athletes to help promote strong and healthy shoulders. Now, there are many club training experts out there. You can find them if you're active on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Club training and mace training has gotten really popular lately, and there's even competitions where people compete in various mace swinging and club swinging exercises. But club training is a very old form of training. It probably dates back hundreds of years. I really don't know the history of it, but I do know that club swinging, a big part of it came from the Middle East. I did have the pleasure of a few years back having the great Dr. Ed Thomas visit my gym, and we got to train with him for about 4 or 5 hours one afternoon, mostly on club training, and learned a lot from him on how club training can benefit the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder joints, as well as just be a great form of restoration and physical fitness training. So most of the club work that I do is what I learned from him utilizing the smaller clubs, but I do some of the work with the heavier club swinging, particularly one of our favorite exercises, which I'm going to demo in this video. But if you really look out there, there's some people who are very involved in club training. My buddy Don, who created the ADX club that I'm going to show here in this video. He's a great resource for club training. There's probably all kinds of groups on Facebook, and there's even people that like to pose with pictures with their clubs and maces. So if you just search a little bit, you should be able to find a club or a mace training expert if you want to get some really in-depth work. We just kind of utilize some of the basic exercises here that I want to demo today. Just mainly things that affect the wrist and the shoulder, because we're usually using them for shoulder health and as a form of restoration with our combative athletes and power lifters and other athletes that the shoulder tends to take a beating through just regular participation in their sport. So the clubs that I use, the smaller ones, are the ones that I got from Dr. Ed Thomas at Motion RX. They come in a variety of sizes. The three most popular, we've got the 3-pound club, the 2-pounder, and then the 1-pounder. And these are the sizes that I utilize most of the time in my training, and honestly the ones that I get the most mileage out of are the 1-pounders and usually the 2-pounders, because when we're doing these we want to do really high repetitions. So I don't even count repetitions, I usually just do these exercises for time. But some of the basic exercises that we use with the smaller clubs, I usually start with the wrist and then work my way up to the shoulder. So just basic wrist swinging exercises with the clubs where you're rotating your wrist both forward and backwards. The key with these exercises is to make sure that you're not opening your hand and creating a pivot between the thumb and the index finger. We're not trying to get a pretty club spin. What we're trying to get is mobility work in the wrist. So making sure that you're keeping a closed grip and just really working some mobility in the wrist. This is a great way to loosen up the wrist, and it's great for joint health. So I usually start with the wrist exercises, and then I move on to some of the more dynamic exercises for the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder. We do different types of casting where we work some of the wrist circles in. So I usually move on from the regular wrist circles to exercises like this, again for lots of reps. I mean, I don't count reps, but I'm doing at least probably 40 or 50 reps per exercise. Usually what I do is I just do each exercise for about a minute. So this whole warm-up only takes like 5 minutes, and I usually do this before a heavy upper body session, or if I'm working with some of my other athletes, we'll use this, like my combative athletes, grapplers, fighters, power lifters, any athlete who the shoulders regularly tweaked or injured through the participation in the sport. You can do these for about 5 minutes at the beginning or at the end of a workout. It's a great, easy thing to add into the training program for joint health and restoration. So after the casting and the wrist rotation exercises, I usually move into some more dynamic shoulder exercises where we do rotations to the front, we do rotations to the back. These can be done with single club or double clubs, but we always work some type of big shoulder rotation after doing the wrist and the casting exercises. And then we move into some of the internal and external rotation patterns after we do the forward and backward rotations. So one of the internal rotation patterns, you're just going to take the club, stretch it across the body, let the club swing the arm up, letting the head of the club drop back behind the shoulder, and then closing that motion at the shoulder, just like so. So this is a very simple internal rotation pattern that we utilize. Can be done with 2 clubs simultaneously. Or they can be done with a separation. This is great, again, for shoulder mobility and restoration. And that's just a basic internal rotation pattern, a basic external rotation pattern. We just reverse that movement where we bring the club up across the body, externally rotate the shoulder out, extend the club out to the side, sweep it back down across the body, letting the head of the club drop back behind the shoulder, and then extending the club out. And again, this can be done together, or it can be done separating the movements. But both the internal shoulder rotation and the external shoulder rotation are the 2 patterns that I move on to after the wrist exercises, the casting exercises, the giant forward shoulder rotations, the backward shoulder rotations. Then we move into the internal rotation pattern, the external rotation pattern. And sometimes, again, some of these skills take a little time to learn, so we don't spend a whole lot of time on it. But if some of my athletes can do the figure 8s, we usually end up with the figure 8 exercise, which is just a little bit more dynamic coordination and timing of shoulder, and it brings in some torso rotation as well. So again, using the small clubs, we work the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, and a little bit of torso. Spending about a minute doing each of those exercises, you have a nice little 5-minute warm-up, which is great for joint health as well as restoration. You know, if you're trying to recover from a really heavy training session, if you're sore, you can come in and do some club swinging the next day as part of a great way to get a little bit of blood flow, to encourage a little bit of restoration recovery from a heavy training session. So that's how we use the small clubs. For the heavy club swinging, my club of choice is the AddX Adjustable Exercise Club. Became friends with the guy that created this, Don Giaffardino. He's a great guy. He developed a really awesome club. This club has 5-pound segments with a screw-on cap. So you can adjust the weight of this club from just the 3.5-pound handle, or you could put the cap on the handle and get 5 pounds, and then you can add 5-pound increments to go all the way up to 25 pounds on this specific club. Now, Don has also created mace extension handle. He's created additions where you can get even heavier than 25-pound clubs. So he's got a few different options as far as the original AddX club goes. The club's fantastic quality. Never had an issue adjusting it. And I know a lot of people who utilize the club and they really, really like it. So it's an easy way to get multiple weight heavy clubs into your training arsenal without going out and buying individual of the old heavy club style, which could, you know, run you quite a bit of money. This is definitely a more economical and more space conscious way to get some heavy club training into your training arsenal. So one of my favorite exercises to do with the heavy club is to do the gamma cast. And that's just a basic, you probably see this a lot with people who swing maces and clubs, but you're just gonna start out with the club, let it rotate around your back, opening up the shoulders. Just like so. So usually when we're working club swinging here at the gym, we always start out with the smaller club exercises, starting for wrist, elbow, shoulder mobility. We do that pattern again. It takes about 5, maybe 6 or 7 minutes to complete. Then I usually finish with some heavier swings, usually some sort of gamma cast or some sort of big, you know, rotation where we're swinging the club all the way around in a circular pattern, which affects the torso even more than the smaller club exercises. So there's so much more involved with club training, so many more exercises that you can do. I'm not a club training specialist. We don't just train on clubs. If you're gonna do that, that's awesome. Clubs and kettlebells can make a great combination together, especially for a more minimalist program. If you wanna train outside in the park or something like that, you can keep some clubs, kettlebells in the trunk of your car. They're very portable, they travel easy, very space conscious, but we tend to use them. We incorporate that with them into our general strength training sessions. And with the clubs, our goal is more joint health and restoration. So you can build fantastic strength through range of motion by doing these club exercises, particularly if you're an athlete like a combative athlete or a football player or a power lifter, somebody whose shoulders are taking a beating. Club training is essential for shoulder health and restoration. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you're not currently using club training, contact me or try to find an expert in club training and find some way to incorporate just some of the basic movements into your training, particularly if shoulder health is an issue for you. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got some tips on club swinging. Hopefully it shows you how we utilize it here at the Extreme Performance Training Center in Atlanta. If you got any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments below this video. If you've got any suggestions for future video topics, please leave those in the comments section as well. And as always, stay strong and stay healthy.